What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to walk you guys through how to make your own power steering hoses for the high pressure side and the low pressure side. I'm not going to show you the low pressure side in this video because it's very simple, and you can use the same PTFE braided steel hose, but I'm not going to show you that in this video because that one's simple. I'm going to show you how to make the high pressure side, the easiest way to route it in your G-body from your power steering pump to your gearbox, and what fittings you need to do so. So stay tuned. Okay, so I wanted to walk you guys through first what you're gonna need. Your hose will look like this when you're done. Okay, this is my old one. Works totally fine. This is just stainless in color, and as you can see, I had a failure on one of my AN fittings because it's a little hard to get to, and there were some other things going on. This fitting has a broken rubber O-ring, so that's besides the point. But this is what we're going to look like in the end to go from your power steering pump to your gearbox. You're going to have two 90s and a slight curve like this, just a very short cable. I know if you go buy the factory one, it's going to be this big long cable and it's going to loop around or back or all this crazy stuff. You don't need to do that. All you need is a little short cable like this. This one is maybe 8 inches. It doesn't even need to be this long. And I'm using PTFE hose from Evil Energy. I got all that stuff on Amazon. Shameless plug for Evil Energy. And what I'm gonna do now, the next thing you're gonna need are these two fittings. If you have a newer style gearbox in your G-body, I know a lot of guys like to use the Buick Grand National box, which is going to be a newer style, and it's going to have the O-rings, IFM. Or if you have an older style, you're going to have just the, what are they called? It's slipping my mind right now, but it won't have an O-ring on the end of it. It'll just be the older style connection that screws down into the pump, because it doesn't need or not the pump, but the gearbox, because it doesn't need an O-ring, because the older style were just pressure fitting, kind of like an AN fitting is, where the two metal comes together at the perfect angle and makes a seal, so it doesn't need an O-ring. But if you go with a Grand National gearbox, or like in my truck, I have a gearbox out of an S10 Extreme, 98 to 2003 work on those, two-wheel drive S10 Extreme. It's the quick turn ratio, 3 turns lock to lock, less than that. And you can get them brand new for relatively cheap because they're still available, where the G-body boxes, I'm not that sure. Pretty sure you can get Grand National boxes, but they might be from aftermarket companies and might be expensive. Anyways, so what you're going to need is these two fittings for the O-ring style boxes. This is an M18 and an M16. The M18 is the high pressure side. The M16 is the low pressure side. And you'll see they have an O-ring on them. And what that does is it goes down into the gearbox and it seals into the gearbox. Then it gives us a 6 AN fitting on the top that we will use our AN fittings, and we will screw these on. This one's bad. I have a new one in there already because I have new O-rings too. And this will screw onto here. And when these screw together, I mean, you can almost do it tight by hand. These 90s, typically they rotate until you tighten them. So get everything clocked. The proper way to do this, let's turn the camera around, point it down inside the car, get a light in here, and I'll show you guys the proper way to do this. So here we can see our two fittings down in our gearbox. Let me see if it's a better angle to come from this way to get the back of our pump also. I'm not sure that we'll be able to see everything in one shot. So the back of our pump is right here. And I already have my fitting with my O-ring in the back of the pump adapter for a 6 AN. Okay, and then you have your two gearbox fittings, so we'll just leave this angle right here. Again, the high pressure side is the closest to the pump here, and this is the M18. This low pressure side is the M16. Now there's a couple ways that you can do this. If you want everything to match, you just get both M16 and M18 O-ring fittings for your newer style box that requires the O-ring. And you would screw those down into the gearbox first, like so. It is, I believe, an 18. No, this side's bigger than an 18 millimeter. Yeah, an 18 is bigger than 18 millimeter. Okay. That's why I have the adjustable wrench. And this one, if you have the low pressure side on already, I already have the fuel, I already have the system filled and primed. So I'm working on not a brand new system. And so what we're gonna do is, we're just gonna get this torqued down. Or I should say get it tightened down, because there's not really a torque spec on it, it's just an O-ring fitting. And I'm sorry if there's wind noise in the background, but I'm here in Florida, and without my fan on, I die, so fan stays on. So we're gonna go ahead and get this turned down. Just like any O-ring type fitting, you don't wanna over torque this. And you also are gonna wanna hold this fitting tight. Sorry, I'm trying not to be in the visual way of your guys' shot there. You're gonna wanna hold this fitting tight when you are tightening the AN fitting on the top. So make sure that, you know, whatever wrench you have, you can get to this. Okay, so we got that snugged. I'm gonna move it out of the way for right now. That one is snugged. Because now, in order to make the line, I'm gonna do this the easy way. And you should be able to see both of these things when I get down here with the two new fittings. So there's a couple different ways that we can run it, and I'm gonna look at that real fast here with you guys. I have, so there's a kit from Evil Energy on Amazon, and it comes with two 90-degree fittings, two 45-degree fittings, two straight fittings, two hose holders, a tool to help you make the fitting itself, and then your roll of tubing. And it's like $57 for the whole kit, so it's fantastic. And this is 10 foot of tubing. You're gonna have more than enough for what you need to do the high pressure and the low pressure side. This is also fuel pressure or fuel rated, so you can use it for other things. You're gonna have more than what you need here. And so what I'm gonna do here is, and this is real difficult to get to, but I'm gonna screw this on the back of my pump here, no hose. And I'm gonna try to make the hose length first. And because my other hose was a little long and it put a little weird pressure on things. So I'm trying to avoid that. And what I want to do is come pretty much straight up. Can we see that fitting pointing out there? Yeah. Okay, well my negative cable here is kind of in the way, but you can see the fitting right in line with the negative cable there. It's pointing straight towards the fender well. And now I'm going to take my other 90 fitting and put it up here and see if 290s is the best way, which I think it's gonna be. Because if I come up like this, now I can bring this fitting up a little bit, and we have the fittings almost pointing directly in the same area. So all we would need is a little short piece of hose to connect the two fittings. And let's get a piece of wire. So this is kind of an easy way. Just going to take a piece of electrical wire. There's snips. And I'm going to feed it slightly into both fittings. and that gives us a visual representation of what our hose will look like. That's perfect. So now what I can do is I can grab it at both ends right here, pull it out, and I like this bend. It's a real easy bend. It's not kinked at all. It's not crimped at all. And then what I'm going to do with the other hose, this one kind of comes this way because this rubber hose was pretty tight. But I'm going to probably come just straight and loop it with the other one, so this rubber hose will be gone. But I'm not going to touch that right now because I know it doesn't leak. So I'm going to get the high pressure side on because I was having a leak right here at the gearbox from that O-ring. And once I get the high pressure side on and there's no leaks, I'll come back and I'll switch the low pressure side out with the new tubing just to match. But with that being said, we're going to take this and I'm going to grab it at both fittings, pull it out here, and now I have my length for my hose. So the piece of hose to match to the fittings, let's cut this side off. And this side. Okay, this is as long as a piece of hose we're gonna need. This is probably about 4 inches. Yeah, exactly. Exactly 4 inches. Now, that's not going to be the total length of the piece of hose that we need because it has to go down inside the AN fitting. If you've made AN fittings before, you understand how that works. So inside here, we have our top piece that'll hold your hose down, our ferrule, and then this is where the hose goes over. Slides like this. This goes inside, and just the PTFE coated part goes inside there. The braided goes on the outside. This slides over, holds it all together. So we're gonna want our hose to come all the way down to here. So now we can measure and see how much extra hose length we need on both sides. If we look here, we know we need about that much. So to get to the threads. So we'll get our ruler and that is an extra, let's say 5/8 of an inch. So we can take our piece of wire and go to our bench with our hose and cut us a piece of hose for the high pressure side. Turn the camera around over here and we'll be right back. All right, with that said, there's a lot of different ways that you can make AN. I'm not here to show you guys how to do that. I will show you how I'm going to do it for the purpose of this video. But I'm not here to try to tell you there's one way that's better than another, or so on and so forth. But what we want to do is stuff out from in front of us here. Get our fittings ready. Okay, now we have this plus 5/8. 5/8 and 5/8 is 1 1/4. This end is already taped and cut nice, but there's 2 little frayed edges that I'll knock off. Not sure if you can see that, but I don't need to go through the process of, and you can see that they just use masking tape. This is from the manufacturer. That's how they cut it. I'm going to use electrical tape just because it's black and it's black hose. That way, if there's a little bit extra that shows over, I'm not worried about it, but I'm going to leave their masking tape line because there's no point in screwing around with that when I have a nice cut on that end already. The masking tape line on this side is about 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to leave that side. I'm going to put my piece of wire here, and then we're going to come 5/8 of an inch on this side, which is probably going to come right to my dirt line right there. Yep. And that's where we're going to mark and cut our hose. Now what you want to do is I'm going to take my electrical tape and I'm going to put it over where I want to cut it. I'm not going to wrap it a bunch of times. I'm just going to go around it like twice. Okay, that's it. because all we're doing is we're keeping the hose braid from cutting loose. We want to have the braid on the hose to stay nice and tight. Pardon me while I find the knife. I don't know why I can't find anything tonight. This will work. Okay, so let's get an exact measurement. That's 4 1/8, and 5/8 is 3/4, and 5/8 is 5 3/16. So we want to have this edge 5 3/16 falls right in the middle of our tape right here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that because that's where I want to cut. Now when you're making these, if you have like an 1/8 inch extra, it's probably not going to be the biggest deal. But if you took all the time to measure everything, to cut it, to get it right, might as well use your measurements, make your marks, make your cuts, and you're good to go. So it's pretty easy now. I'm just going to take my angle grinder and I'm going to cut this all the way around. Not going to open up the roll anymore because I don't need to. I have plenty of space over here. And it's going to get loud, but you guys won't want to watch this. So. Now, after I make that cut, I always go back and make sure that my tube is flat. We have our tape there over the edge, which will protect everything from fraying. And this is where our little tool comes in handy, because if you let's say you use a what's it called? A hacksaw or something that could cause some compression on your tubing, you can use this little tool to open it back up. I'm also going to take this pipe reamer and I'm going to go on the inside of this because I saw a little bit of jaggedness there. Just get rid of that. Now guys, remember that braided fittings are not the easiest things to make. So you would take this and just put this through the middle there. That's the exact size of what the hose would be. So if it got deformed a little, you can get it right back to what it should be. You can also double check both ends that you have the right for what you need. And then what I'm going to be doing is bending this pretty much at a 90. And you can see that we bend here without a problem, without kinking, without any issues. So the easy way to do this now is This is going to screw down into your fitting, so this needs to go up over this end. I'm going to put both of these on. This kind of gives you an idea too of how your end is going to be if you have too much tape or anything like that. So then what you want to do is get this little guy, the end here, not the flat fat end, the pointed end, you're going to want to put on the tubing just around this inner plastic. And you're going to want to get that seated You can use a little bit of grease if you need to do that, or a little bit of oil, or a little bit of power steering fluid. But I'm just going to get it past the first nub there, because this should pull it together now, right? Because remember, we have this that goes inside the tube here. And so if we push this on, this should... Now, here's a pointer. You have your tape here. You want your hose, you want this to be way inside here. If it's like this, it's going to blow off. So I actually want to get that on all the way before I start putting this together. I changed my mind. Let me get a little grease, a little lube, and I'll be right back. Okay. So the easiest way to do this, because this is what you want. You can see that white hose all the way up to the end of the insert there, which Evil Energy gives you a little instruction on how to do this. See that insert, the white hose needs to be all the way up to the end of the insert. Now, because we have this end already over our tubing on both sides, I'm going to take the tape off the end of the hose, because this helps this whole process. You need the tape there to get this end on. Once that end's on, you don't need the tape. Get yourself a little tiny flat blade screwdriver. Let's get this guy back out of the way on this side so I can show you. Now they have special vices, vice mounts and all this crazy stuff that you can get for putting these together. I've never used them. So what I do is I just take this little screwdriver and I separate the braided hose here from this PTFE liner. If you're going to do these all the time, you might want to get the what's it called? Bench vise tool. Okay. And now we have a little separation. Take a little spray lube. This is just a mold release silicone or spray. And that puts it on the PTFE tube liner so that we can get this over the top and all the way down. And we're going to push that down until we're seated all the way like the other side. Almost. Okay, we have a little bit of now struggle on this side here, so I'm going to just try to move this stainless braid back just a hair. And now we're seated. Now remember, this is important because this is the life of your fitting and tube blowing off and stuff like that. So we'll just look at their directions here. So once you get that seated on, the next thing is to put, this says to put your tube end here into your socket on your vise. But what we're gonna do is, this is just gonna go together like this, and we're gonna seat this all the way in there. And we're gonna pull that down over the hose. Now, the reason they tell you to use the socket and the vise is because, I'll show you next what I do so that I make sure the hose does not come out as you start putting this together. I get like one thread started, okay? And then I take a piece of electrical tape. Just gonna cut a couple pieces here. And I wrap it around the hose. Now, these couple pieces might not be enough because I have grease on my hands, so the tape is not sticking. But typically I do this and wrap around the hose so I know where my fitting started. So now as I'm screwing this in, I want to make sure that this gap closes and this gap opens, and not that the tube and this stay together, because if that happens, it means you're pushing the tube off of your inner here. So I just take this and I kind of force this down. We get to there and we see that we moved here and not just here. And now we're gonna need wrenches. So let me get my wrenches. These are bigger than 18mm too. I don't understand why they change the size of things when, you know, you're halfway through doing a job and you're using the same fittings. Okay, these are 3/4. So now what I'll do is get my adjustable on my wrench side. And remember, I want to close onto the hose, not push the hose out. So we'll be able to see that here. And we're going to take this and we're going to tighten down until it's all the way tight. Now, some of these fittings, there's different ways that this happens. So you have to watch how your fitting says to be put together. These ones, I know they go all the way until they're fully seated together so that this gap here is gone in between the two, which I'll show you in a minute. Just like that, because if you go too much or you try to go any more, now you're just going to push your hose out. So now we can see that we moved, you see this distance here, which I can measure it from the other side that we did not put together. That's about 1/4 inch. And you see where our tape line was, we're about 1/4 of an inch. So that shows us that we closed our gap and we didn't lose any movement of our hose from inside here. So we know we're gonna have a foolproof seal here and it's not gonna leak. I mean, things can happen, but we know we put the fitting together right. So then we take that off and we have our really nice end. I'm gonna go ahead and get this other side and then we'll install this on the hose. Be right back. All right, now we got both sides of our hose together. Now we don't have to worry too much about which way that these fittings are facing because they do rotate. So we'll be able to rotate these into the way that we need them. So let's go ahead and get the camera down here on the car again. Zoom in and put the hose on and get our everything tightened down. And these Evil Energy fittings are nice. Now you can see I didn't use any specialty tools. I didn't use rags over my fittings. and they didn't scratch. The black coloring did not come off. So this is something that you can see. I don't even have two of the proper size wrenches. I was just using an adjustable, and you can put yourself together a really nice looking hose. 60 bucks for the entire kit. And then I think the two fittings for the M16 and the M18 were another $12. So you maybe have $75, $80 after you pay tax and all that fun stuff. And you can make both of your hoses like this, because the other side we would use another one of these with a 90, and then on the low pressure side of the power steering pump there, we would just use a hose clamp, and that would clamp our inner lining of our PTFE onto our power steering pump there. And you can always take like a heat gun, because it's plastic on the inside, and heat it up a little bit if you need help fitting it over that. Don't heat it too much, just enough to get it snugged over so that it goes on there easier. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this straight like this, and I'm going to go ahead and fish this up on our engine side and get it started, and get this side tightened down so we have one side tightened here. Now when you take your hose off the back of your power steering pump on your engine side, you're not going to lose fluid, because there's the pressure thing in the back of the pump there, whatever it's called. My brain's not working right now. It's hot out here. So you're not going to lose fluid on that side. Some fluid will come out of the gearbox from the high pressure, and the low pressure, it'll just pour out because there's no restriction. Some will come out of the high pressure side on the gearbox, but back here on the pump on the high pressure side, you're not going to lose fluid because it has to be pushed out through the pump. On the low pressure side, fluid will just run out. So that's just something to make note of, so you know you're not going to lose your fluid. The other thing with these fittings, once they do get tight, they do not rotate anymore. So you want to make sure that as you're putting this on, I'm going to go ahead to help with counteracting that from happening and getting my hose really out of whack. I have my power steering pump side all the way on by hand. I'm going to do the same on my gearbox side. And you can kind of like jiggle this and get it snug as tight as you can by hand before you come at it with a wrench. This side's a little harder to get to, admittedly. And so there is what our hose will look like. Right there. That's it. You don't need a big loop. You don't need anything. It doesn't need to come close to the headers. Nothing. Just that right there. We take our wrench, we tighten it up, we're good to go. I will go ahead and do that on camera, but I'm going to stop, start again, because I don't know if I'll include this part or not. So now all we're going to do is take our 3/4 inch wrench, and I will hold some back pressure against the fitting up here where my thumb is, so that I can tighten this without that part rotating, which my hose is pretty much in place, so I'm not too worried about that happening. But okay, I'm slipping off because that side is not 3/4, that side is 18. Well, I had not goofed up my fittings yet. Now I put a little stuff on it. Now remember, these are AN. So what you're going to do, the two pieces fit together. It's 37 degrees. You don't want to over tighten them. You don't need to. It's not necessary. You just want to tighten them down. That's it. Gotta love these tight areas to work in. Because if you over tighten them, you can break something. And that's not fun once you get to this point. Now, I've heard some guys say with AN fittings that you want to snug them and then back them off a half a turn and tighten them down again. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just always do it. Make sure I get a full seat. And that's it. We're not moving. We have no play. I'll go ahead and wipe up all the fluid from down there so that I can just monitor and make sure that none of our fluid is leaking anymore out of our gearbox. I'll probably get some brake fluid or brake cleaner and spray the area, or some soapy water. Just to make sure that we can monitor and make sure we're not losing any more fluid. Make sure that our O-rings are staying tight and snug. And then, like I said, once I know that this high pressure side is good again, yeah, that's good. There's a little pocket right there that fluid can puddle. So I actually don't need to spray any brake cleaner. I can just watch that little area to see if any fluid gets down there. I'm not going to try to start it or anything like that. Just going to make sure I get down in there really good with this rag. There's still some fluid in there. Okay, I think we got the last little bit of fluid that was in there. And that's it. And as a final measure, especially if you were testing for leaking, I'm just going to take the brake cleaner and let it dry off. Now that'll ensure that when that dries up, I have no more leaking. And we'll let this sit and we'll observe that tomorrow. We should be good. Should be good to go. So that's it. I hope this video helped you guys out. I know the power steering system is one of those systems that you got to go to some hose guy and have him make a special custom hose, and I did that before and that actually ended up being bad. I've had him make two for me, power steering hoses. The first one was for my original gearbox, and it was not the O-ring style, it was the other style. That one worked fine. I got the O-ring style gearbox. I had to make another hose for me, and that one leaked. So that's when I decided to get the AN and do it myself. And like I said, I had no issues with this hose. The AN connections did not leak. The issue that I had was the O-ring side over here did leak. And then when I got a new O-ring, I put it together, it was taking it back apart, put it together, take it back apart to see and test everything to see if the O-ring was going to be okay. I don't know why. And I ended up over tightening, and I mean, things happen. So, but otherwise the hose did not leak. It worked on the power steering. You can see it was a little long, so it was a little kind of crooked, and I didn't like it, which is why I wanted to redo it anyways. So hopefully this helps you guys out. You can make your own custom power steering hoses. You can make those any length. So if you were going to do like a power boost setup or anything like that, you can run those back to the brake booster. Really whatever you want to do with them. But this stuff will hold up. It's got to be the PTFE. If you go on Amazon, Evil Energy, it's got a 10,000 PSI burst rating and a 3,000 PSI standard rating. So it's got to be at least like 1,500 PSI. Most gearboxes are going to be like 8 to 1,200 PSI. So you want at least a minimum of 1,500 working PSI. And then usually the burst is 3,000 to 6,000, or this kit that I bought is up to 10,000. So again, this is from Evil Energy. It comes with 8 fittings and 10 foot of hose for $60 on Amazon. I will put a link in the description. And good luck on your power steering. Let me know, comment down below if this helped you out, if you guys did something, if you guys made it great. Send me a link down in the comments. Send me some pictures, however you can send them to me. Precision Computing, Lucid Made. Check us out. Our link tree will be beneath. You can get all your G-Body emblems. Lots of new stuff coming soon, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. We'll catch you in the next video.